Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a system of sales contracts that's built on a foundation of, well, fairness and transparency. It is a completely different way to think about commerce and finance, so let's get right into it.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the core principles, the why behind it all. Then we'll unpack a blueprint for how sales are actually classified. We're going to explore two main paths, one based on how the price is shared, and the other based on timing. And finally, we'll see how this whole framework completely redefines the role of a bank in modern finance.
But first, let's start with a huge question. What would banking even look like without interest? I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a radical idea, and it's the central challenge that Islamic finance was really designed to solve. Answering it forces you to completely rethink how money, assets, and profit can work together. To really get the solution, we first have to understand the why. So our first section is all about those foundational ideas: finance, fairness, and faith. You see, at its heart, Islamic commercial law isn't just some dry set of rules. It's a whole framework built on these really strong ethical values. The entire goal is to make sure every single transaction, from buying a coffee to financing a house, is just, transparent, and fair, and specifically avoids what's known as riba, or interest. And that philosophy, that's the key to everything that follows. Okay, so how do you build a financial system on that kind of foundation? Well, you start with a clear blueprint. And in this case, there are two fundamental ways you can categorize pretty much any sale. Now take a look at this. This flowchart is basically our master key for this whole topic. It beautifully maps out the entire logic. See, you can think of any sale as going down one of two paths. On one side, it's all about timing. When does the money change hands? And on the other side, it's all about transparency. Does the seller tell you what they originally paid? Let's go down that transparency path first. This brings us to a really fascinating category known as trust sales, where the entire deal is built on this principle of revealing the original price. So you've got two basic approaches here. The first is a bargain sale, or musalama. This is probably what you're most familiar with. You haggled, you negotiate a price, but you have no idea what the seller's cost was. But the second is a trust sale, or amana. And here, the seller is actually obligated to tell you exactly what they paid for the item. It's a transaction that is literally founded on complete, total honesty. And inside these trust sales, there are three main types. Murabaha is when the seller tells you the cost and then adds an agreed-upon profit. Talia is when they sell it to you at the exact cost price, no profit at all. And waliha is when they actually sell it at a loss for below cost. Now that first one, murabaha, that's the one you really want to remember. It is a cornerstone of modern Islamic finance. Let's just lock in that definition so we're all on the same page. A murabaha is a cost plus sale. It's as simple as the seller saying, hey, this item cost me $100, and the buyer agrees to purchase it for, say, 110. The cost is known, the profit is known, and everything is out in the open. It's a sale, not a loan. Okay, so let's hop over to the other side of our flowchart. This branch of classification has nothing to do with disclosing the price. It's all about timing. When do the goods and the money actually change hands? This slide lays out the three main scenarios really clearly. First, you have the normal sale, right? You get the goods, you pay the money, all on the spot. Then you have deferred payment, or BBA, where you get the goods now, but you pay for them later, maybe in installments. And finally, there's deferred delivery, or salam, where you pay now for something you're going to get in the future. Think of it like pre-ordering a farmer's harvest. Now you might be thinking, hold on, charging more for a deferred payment? Doesn't that sound an awful lot like interest? And that is a key debate. The conclusion that scholars came to is that it's allowed, but only if the total price is fixed right at the start and never, ever changes. So if you agree to pay $12,000 in installments for a $10,000 item, that price is locked in stone. It won't fluctuate or compound if you're late, and that is the crucial difference from interest. Okay, so we have these two frameworks, one for price transparency and one for timing. Now let's see how they actually come together to create a real-world banking system. This is where the whole role of the bank gets completely flipped on its head. This visual explains the shift perfectly. Look on the left. In conventional banking, you, the customer, are juggling two separate contracts, a loan from the bank and a purchase from the developer. The bank is just a source of cash. But on the right, in an Islamic transaction, the bank first buys the house from the developer. Then the bank sells that house to you. You only have one contract, and it's with the bank acting as a seller. Let's break that down even more. The entire relationship changes.
You're not a borrower and creditor anymore, you're a buyer and a seller. The profit isn't based on interest charged on money, it's a markup on the sale of a real physical asset. And this part is critical. The bank actually owns the asset for a period of time, which means it bears the risk that comes with that ownership before it's sold to you. Let's make this super real with a car purchase. First, you find the car you want. Then you ask the Islamic bank to buy it for you. So the bank goes and buys that car from the dealer, taking legal ownership. For that moment in time, it's the bank's car and the bank's risk. Then the bank sells the car to you at the original cost plus that profit margin you both agreed on. Finally, you pay the bank back in fixed installments. You know, this quote from our source material really just hits the nail on the head. The bank should act as a trader and not a financier. The profit is considered legitimate because it comes from a genuine buying and selling transaction, not from just lending out money and charging interest. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The entire system is designed to replace interest-based loans with a whole network of trade-based contracts. Profit is generated from the buying and selling of actual, tangible assets, and that fundamentally involves sharing risk between the bank and the customer. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've been focused on finance, right? But think about that core idea of amana, those trust sales, where you have to disclose your cost. Beyond just banking, what could that principle of radical transparency teach us about ethics and building trust in all the other parts of modern business?